Alrighty, everyone. Well, hey, welcome. We have stepped in to the Milwaukee Muskie Expo right here in West Bend, Wisconsin, right down the street from my little sister. Shout out to my sister, giving birth to her second kid right now as we're speaking. Whether you muskie fish all the time or once a year, it's a fish that you're not guaranteed to catch, you know? And they're such behemoths, they're such monsters. Even when they're small, there's something truly large about them. You know, the way they feed, just the colors on them, the teeth on them, they're beautiful fish.
It's a fish of 1,000 casts, or 10,000 casts.
Absolutely. So now Lax Productions, tell me a little bit about Lax Productions.
Well, Lax Reproductions is, we make replicas of fish that people catch. They take a nice picture of it, a length measurement, a girth measurement, and they put it back so someone else can catch it again in the future. It preserves the resource we have. Yeah. And they got a trophy to put on a wall that'll last forever. It's better than a skin mount. Skin mounts are, you know, they're going to deteriorate through time. Replicas are going to last forever. Plus the fish is living and swimming.
Yeah, so, you know, I've seen skin mounts that date back almost 100 years, right? So that was an artwork, an art form that's been going on forever, and truly a staple in the outdoor industry, whether it's hunting or fishing. You know, you can see taxidermy from almost every generation back.
Yes, you can, yeah. You can usually tell what generation it was from by the quality and how it weathered through the years.
Yeah, absolutely. But now, you see that dating, right, on the skin mounts?
Yes.
But replicas, I haven't seen that yet, but will that ever happen? I don't know. How long has replication process been out? And are we using the same process that you started with at first?
Well, we started in 1992, my father and I. We had the business Lax Taxidermy, and we were getting a lot of big muskies in through the years, 50 inchers, a lot of muskies. Everybody's keeping them. They want to put something on the wall. Okay, well, they didn't want the replicas back then because they were kind of fake looking. They were fake looking and plasticky.
Cartoonish almost.
Yeah, so we said, you know, we're going to make something that looks really good, so people are encouraged to put the muskie back.
Sure.
In the 90s, this was the early 90s. So we molded a bunch of the fish that were being kept through the years.
Yeah.
Big, little, all different size muskies.
We don't discriminate against the size of the muskie when it comes to
We've got probably
the
about
replica.
120 different molds right now, and we can accommodate tiger muskie, northerns, steelhead. These are all fish that have been put back now. Absolutely. But back then, they wanted to keep them to put on the wall because there was nothing to look good. Now we got something that looks good, and they put them back.
Speaking of looking good, you know, this fish right here, I guess we can do the debut, guys. This is actually my first piece of taxidermy, but actually my first replica. Never have killed a fish for the wall either, never wanted to, you know. I do harvest to eat, you know. I think that's why a lot of these fish and animals are put on the earth. But if you don't have to, and I wouldn't eat this bad girl.
No, this is a trophy fish.
This is a trophy fish.
A perch.
So the fact that you guys got to replicate it for me, the fish got to go right back in the water, it's amazing.
Yes, yeah, it's living back in the water, and hopefully it gets to be 50 inches.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what we're hoping.
That's what you're hoping for?
Yeah.
And we were talking last night about this fish, so I'll tell you guys real quick. So this fish was caught about 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago, summer of 23. And I was out with my buddy Alex, I was out with my buddy Brad, and shout out to Gary. Gary's got a private house on a private lake, not too far from my home. And now I always recommend, if you ever touch your body of water, you always discuss it with your DNR or whoever does your lake management, you know, especially when it comes to toothy critters, because they can damage a body of water really quick. If you put regular muskie instead of tiger muskie, you could have a big problem because tiger muskie are sterile, right?
Yeah,
so
tigers are sterile, yeah.
you don't have any reproduction of them. So when you put them in a body of water, you kind of know the amount of offspring you're going to have, which is zero.
And these are predators.
Right. These are true predators, and they're just going to keep growing. Unless they die of natural causes, right? Because nothing else in a pond or small lake should be able to really do anything to them.
No, these are their predators. They're going to eat the perch. They're going to eat the bluegills. And
yeah. Me and the boys were out just doing a little bass fishing, you know. We were out throwing a doobie swim bait, a new color I wanted to try out. And you see there's this little bass in its mouth here, you know? I don't know if you guys can see that with the angle of the shot of this one, but we hooked up into a little about 12-inch bass, and that guy was flopping around in the water, and bam, gets T-boned. We let him take it for about 30 seconds before we set the hook, and just like that.
Amazing.
Yeah, truly amazing. We caught it. A Chicago suburb, you know, just a little pond, you know, and we caught that fish. So
You caught somebody's pet.
caught someone's pet, right? And the guy put it in there 6 years before, so it's a true testament of how strong the fish is, you know, and how much it's been eating, because it had some serious girth to it. It had some real
Very
length to
healthy,
it.
yeah.
Very healthy,
Very
yeah.
nice, very nice.
You know, one thing I noticed about this fish was it had a rip in it, and you guys replicated that.
Yes.
I love that, because it makes it more unique, right? Because not every tiger muskie looks the same.
No, and this fish will probably have that the rest of his life. It was a very deep cut on it, and
Yeah.
you'll be able to identify it. Plus, you can identify the markings, of course, on a tiger.
Sure, absolutely.
That's what makes them quite unique.
Now, you get fish in a lot, you know, you've seen thousands and thousands of different catches. When you have a ripped fin like that, do you know what that usually indicates?
You know, a lot of times the ripped fins are from the net,
Oh, really?
but this one was one that was grown over, so I have no idea what it was from. But when most people catch fish, their fins are all ripped. It's from they netted it.
Get it
And
in between the netting.
Yes.
Interesting.
And a lot of times that'll heal back, but this one didn't. This was a really deep one that was,
Yeah.
it could have been 2-3 years before.
Sure, sure. What are some other interesting things you've seen, whether it's a unique adaptation of the fish or a growth on it, or maybe something man-made?
Well, you see, there's growths, there's lamprey marks on fish. We put
Yep.
scars on them to customize your replica.
Sure.
I mean, that's just what your fish was. If he had a lamprey mark on it.
Yeah, that's your fish.
Yeah, then it identifies him on the wall. You got a story to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you put an actual lamprey on the fish? Have you done that?
No, I have not.
No? Okay, all right.
We'll
if
work on that.
Yeah, if I catch a king salmon with a lamprey on it,
Yeah.
I might have to bring those two in for you, all right?
Sure.
So, Rick, if someone wanted to get a replica done, whether and it could be anything, right? I'm looking at crappie, bass,
Anything.
trout, but I like the idea the most of your trout and your muskie, because those fish are in the smaller realm of numbers,
Yes.
and they live for a long amount of time. So preserving them and letting them live a long life and getting up to be a trophy fish that someone would want a replica of, I think is so important.
Yeah, the best way to order is look at my website, laxreproductions.com.
Okay.
Look at the website. You can email us and get a quote, send a picture. We love to look at the picture and give you a price on how to do it.
And now, to get the most accurate replica, right?
Yep.
To get your most accurate one, you can only do what's provided to you, right?
Exactly.
You weren't there. You don't know everything off the top of your head. So if someone wants to make sure they're happy with the final product and it's as much like their fish as possible, what all can they provide to you to get it most to T of what that fish was?
Nice pictures are very important. I mean,
Yep.
the pictures for the coloration,
Yep.
how it was built, the size of the head, whether it had scars on it. I mean, every muskie looks different.
Yeah. Each
The
side looks
pattern,
different.
The pattern, yeah, everyone's different. So
Yeah.
I look at you get the length of it when you catch it. If you can get a girth, that's great. Pictures are the most important for the coloration. I usually ask the people, what time of the year did you catch it?
Yeah.
Well, I caught it in the fall. Well, it's going to be a thick fish.
Sure.
If you caught it in the spring, after it spawned,
Thinner.
it might be a little beat up, it might be thinner.
Yeah.
So we can work together and make sure that we accommodate exactly what you want on the wall.
So get as many pictures as you can, and get as many I think measurements are obviously important. So you said you want length.
Length, then
And how do you measure the length? To snout to tip?
Yep.
Snout to tip?
Everybody's going to get the length. They're going to get the most out of it.
Yep.
And then if you can get the girth, get it right around the
Right
middle
around
here.
center?
Yep, and that's about it. I mean,
Yeah.
if you say, if you caught it and you said, hey, it had a monster head, well, we're going
Right.
to make some notes and make sure we put
Right.
a good big head on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought this one had a good head. Looks good. Tail looks good. Yeah, honestly, thanks so much for doing a great job on it. And what do you guys think? Should we put this into the podcast studio? Again, my first piece of replica, so might have to throw it in the studio,
Very
huh?
good.
All right, Rick. Well, hey, have a great day. And guys, if you have never come, make sure you check it out next year, the Chicago or the Milwaukee Muskie Show. We'll see you there.
How you guys doing? Ben from Duke's Dozer Spinnerbaits. I wanted to thank Wisconsin for having me this weekend at the Wisconsin Muskie Expo. It's a great turnout. If you weren't able to make the show, you can head over to our website at dukesdozerspinnerbaits.com. Over there, you can see we have 40 different colors, 6 different models, and you can literally build a bait however you want it from the ground up. You can pick your weight, your hook style, your blade color, your blade combo, your skirt colors, the whole 9. Head over there today and buy a bait.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. I'm here with my buddy Jeff, owner of the Muskie Academy. So I said, yeah, someone that runs an academy on muskie should be able to talk a little bit about this fish. Sure. So I know you guys can't see me too well because I got such a big fish in front of me. It's the Loch Ness monster of the fresh water. It's the great white shark of the lakes, you know. Jeff, the muskie. Describe it to me, tell me about this fish, you know, what do we got here?
Yeah, you know, you see these shows and you see these big fish, there's an allure to them. They're a big fish, they're a low density fish, they're not easy to catch. And there's something about it when you hook one your first time, or you see one come in after a bait for the first time, or it grabs your bluegill, grabs a panfish. Most of the guys in this room could probably relate to something like that. Is what that got them started in muskie fishing, and there's just something special about them, you know.
We talked to our buddies over here in Kentucky. I know West Virginia has a good muskie program. Out in the East Coast, New York might have the home of some of the biggest muskie in the world. But here in the Midwest, I feel like we are muskie. I feel like the Midwest is muskie culture. Whether you're on some of the big lakes in Minnesota, you know, your Lake of the Woods, your Leech, your Mille Lacs, down to central and southern Illinois has good muskie fishing. And of course, the state we're in right here, Wisconsin, Michigan, there's great muskie fishing all around the Midwest.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. The Midwest is, I would say, in many ways, aside from maybe in Canada, but certainly in the United States, considered kind of the cradle of muskie fishing. Right? You know, your Hayward over to Minocqua, Eagle River, that ceded territory in northern Wisconsin, as well as, you know, the waters of Green Bay historically had muskies as well, all through that system. And then you've got, you know, up in Minnesota as well, that kind of Leech Lake area, and they've certainly disseminated from there, but that's, you know, the namesake of the strain of fish that they stock in most of their lakes.
Absolutely. And yeah, let's touch a little bit more on that, because for someone who doesn't know a whole lot of muskie and can always learn more, I was just talking about the differences in bass, right? We have the spotted bass, the largemouth, the smallmouth. When it comes to muskie, we know we have, or at least I would say most know that there's a slight difference between the tiger muskie and a regular muskie. Right. And that's a little more simple, but you want to explain that one real quick?
Yeah, so a tiger muskie is a hybrid between a northern pike and a muskellunge. It's typically a female muskie. The pike do spawn first, so the males of any species that spawn, typically the males are hanging around the spawning grounds longer, and those males typically find a female muskie. It's almost never the other way around, at least in a natural setting. Sure. And so you end up with those, in years where you have usually it's where a really quick warm up, like a prolonged cold spell, kind of keeps those pike from spawning too early, and then it warms up, and then the muskies are kind of ready to roll. Yeah. They hop in there, and you get a little bit of that overlap. Those are typically the years that bump into those year classes, at least in lakes that have natural reproduction in the first place.
Speaking of the muskellunge, without any tampering or hybridness, you still have fish that look different. Yes. There's a couple bodies of water that is known for giant muskie, right? You got Green Bay, Lake St. Clair, and Leech Lake. And those three fish kind of all seem to look a little different.
Yeah, so like the St. Clair and the Georgia Bay, any of that stuff in that Great Lakes, those are what are called the Great Lakes spotted muskies. Some people call them silver, but like Great Lakes spotted is what they're known as. Okay. Then you've got what would be the Minnesota strain of fish, which is your Leech Lake fish. And then a lot of the bodies of water in like Canada and stuff, stuff like a Lake of the Woods. Those places have never been stocked. That's kind of their own little strain. They still kind of have a lot of similarities to like those Minnesota, the leechers, if you will. But when you go from place to place, they do look different, and they do tend to grow a little different, have a little different build depending on where that genetic hails from. Then we've got our Wisconsin ones. There's a couple different subs there, but without getting into too much detail, basically you've got your Minnesota fish, your Wisconsin fish, your Great Lakes fish, and then a variety of those large systems in Canada that some of them are intertwined, but a lot of them are their own breeding populations. Sure. Lake of the Woods being the best example that probably everybody knows. Like those are Lake of the Woods fish. Sure. That's what's there.
When you look at a fish this big, we're talking close to 50 inches, I'm sure, on this fish, and very thick. What does it take for a fish to grow that big? Years? I know it's different, but how much does an average fish like this eat? I mean, obviously they have to have a large area that they kind of call their home. I'm going to imagine they don't hang out all in big groups this size together.
Yeah, well, the answer is yes and no to all of it, right? There's sometimes they do pack up. Where you find one muskie is a great place to find another. Places like the Great Lakes or a lot of the Shield Lakes, Minnesota, some of the northern Minnesota stuff in particular, as well as the Canadian stuff, you'll get pretty large schools. And in the Great Lakes, your St. Clair, it's not uncommon to find a school that might be 5 or 10, there might be 20 or 30, or it might be a couple smaller little packs of 5 or 10 that have just kind of congregated in an area because of a concentration of bait or wind or current or something that's attracted them there. So they're not really a solitary fish. I think that might have been in the past what people thought. And sometimes there is maybe a big fish holding down a spot, but fish do rotate in and out of spots. If you are on, like, say, a piece of structure, a preferred piece of structure, sometimes they'll rotate on and off as they feed and fill and as windows open up throughout the day for them to feed. So there really is no good answer to say, like, this is what all muskies do.
Right.
Even it boils down when you do talk about a low-density fish like this, they've done some transmitters, some telemetry studies, Green Bay being one of the best examples, and there was one done in northern Wisconsin in the Mantuish chain, and it just showed some of these fish were from the mouth of the Fox River in the lower bay, ripped up to Sturgeon Bay, over to Marinette, and down to like that Pensacola Ganos area over the course of a few weeks.
So hundreds of miles traveled.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just as the crow flies. You're talking probably a solid 70, 80 miles. And if you're to draw a line, 60 to 70, certainly. Yeah. And that's just as the crow flies. Right. And what makes them do that? I'm sure it could be anything. Sometimes maybe they just decide to go for a walk, right? It took a little, but a lot of times I think they're following the bait. But even in that same study, they had other fish that set up at the mouth. There's one in particular, there was a male, it was like a mid 40-inch male. They basically set up shop at the Cat Islands, which is that complex right outside the mouth of the Fox River. Sure. And that's just kind of where he set up shop and stayed.
Never leaves,
yeah. And when you look at those places, there's so much food and so much bait, there's really no reason for those fish to leave.
Sure.
So why one leaves and goes and puts on 80 miles in 2 weeks, and why one stays in a 2-mile radius for months on end, it's anybody's guess. But the times when they do move indefinitely are going to be stuff like your seasonal, your spring and your fall, most notably the spawn.
All right, so we learned a little bit about the muskie, right? Let's talk about things that help us catch more now, all right? Sure. Let's start with food, all right? So obviously, match the hatch is something in fishing you get told a lot, right? But I look out here at this muskie show, I gotta be honest, there's some funky looking things, all right? Now this year in the bass world, we started fishing with soft plastic dice with hair on it, all right? So that's a weird one. But some of these creations are beautiful. Some are Frankenstein-esque. I like we got a booth over here, the safari booth. It literally, some of those creatures look like they're out of Africa,
Right, yeah.
Talk about the food base a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for muskies, sometimes less is more. There's a lot of variability between what system you're at, what time of year you're at, what stage of their annual or seasonal cycle that these fish are in, whether it be that pre-spawn, post-spawn, midsummer, before the turnover. So the preferences and stuff can change on a seasonal basis, certainly, but even on a day-to-day or even an hourly basis in between periods of the day when they become active, something like a bucktail that's more of a steady retrieve, which would be blades, like a big spinner basically. When they're more aggressive, that's something they'll typically be interested in chasing. And if they're not doing that, sometimes you got to slow it down, something that's got more pauses and more erratic motions, like a large soft plastic like a bulldog or a medusa, or certainly a dive and rise like something like a suic, which is a really long-standing bait, a staple in the muskie industry, or any of these. There's tons of basement builders here that make other dive rise or gliders and all sorts of different stuff. More that erratic motion to kind of trigger strikes from fish that aren't chasing aggressively. Sure. And some days it just varies. Some days they're eating rubber aggressively too. You do get variability amongst that, but to figure out what they want is always the puzzle, and it's really part of the allure of the sport in general.
And something that's always helped me catch more fish is learning through hands-on, right? So physically pulling a shad out of a bass's mouth, or when I'm filleting perch, seeing the gobies and the crayfish inside the stomach, of that. So the actual forage of a muskie, I'm gonna go out on a limb, right, and say we're probably eating a lot of bass, a lot of crappie, perch, but Cisco and shad, right, are bait fish that get very large in a lot of these northern systems.
Sure.
I've been introduced to the tulipy.
Yep. Cisco, tulipy.
Yeah. So same thing.
Yep, same thing.
Okay.
Yep.
No, that's how much you know when you're not from the north. You know. Any other things I'm missing out there, bait fish wise?
Yeah, for muskies, they do tend to show a preference for what they call soft rayed forage, which means stuff that's not prickly, right? Soft fins. Even like a pike or a muskie, they'll eat small pike. They'll eat a lot of suckers. They'll eat a fair amount of bullheads if they're present in the system, and certainly they'll eat bass and panfish or even walleyes. But those aren't always necessarily preferred. They do prefer the soft rayed. Perch are a huge, being maybe one of the exception being perch. Perch are a huge staple in the diet most lakes. If you got a good perch population,
I love perch too.
And they're abundant, right? Perch are a very prolific breeder. There's something that can be, they're a nice bite size, that 3 to 7 inch class is usually well represented, and certainly larger, but perch, suckers, stuff like a whitefish or a tulipy or Cisco, whatever you want to call them. Some of those are different variations depending where you are. But any of that stuff is going to be a staple in their diet. But certainly we've all seen or heard stories of a bluegill or a bass or a pike getting grabbed. And sometimes that might just also be that erratic motion of a fish frantically trying to escape an angler that's hooked. Sure. And that triggers them to strike as well. Yeah. I've seen it through the ice. I've seen it in open water where you just, a bass is fighting or a bluegill's doing the circles and all of a sudden out of nowhere just whoop, they come and they grab it. It's almost the same way that they grab your bait when it comes by them. It's an aggression thing. It's a trigger for them. So it might not necessarily be the actual preference for that species that was on the line. It was just that there was a fish in distress, target of opportunity, and they're an ambush predator. They take advantage.
And is there a bigger difference on the time of year that you see what they're eating? Like. Now you guide.
I do, yep, full time, yep.
And you guide all over, it seems like, a little bit.
Yeah.
So one area you might know a little bit about is the Hayward area.
Yeah, Hayward over to Minocqua. I'm more in like the Vilas, Oneida, Iron, and Price County, which is that like north central part of the state. I go as far east as about like Kentucky Lake and like Forest County there, and then over to Phillips would be about as far west as I get that way. But the Hayward is very similar. Sure. Our lakes, it's a very similar area. Minocqua's maybe a little bit more developed in that area, but I have fished over there a bit. But it all translates very well. Very very similar systems in both.
And I brought up Hayward because of the fact that there's a big giant muskie,
Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame.
Freshwater Hall of Fishing. And you get there and people see that and think about it. And it's funny because I've never been there, but yet when I think of muskie, I think of that area. I think of northern Wisconsin, and we were talking earlier about all the places there is muskie. Yeah. But what is it about the northern Wisconsin area that is special when it comes to muskie fishing?
Again, I think a lot of it stems from it's kind of the birthplace of the sport in many ways. There were certainly pockets of it. You kind of had like, your people in northern Minnesota or in parts of Minnesota where the muskies were present. You had people in northern Wisconsin where a lot of that stuff was marketed by people up there to the people down in your Chicago or Milwaukee or your larger cities to the south to bring them up. And muskies have always had that lore about them. So it's anybody can catch a limit of walleyes, right? But anytime somebody came in with a muskie, it was a big deal. And those were a lot of the first places because those fish were naturally occurring in those areas. It's kind of why the birthplaces of the sport was there. Yeah. You talked earlier about how it's so widespread now to Virginia, Kentucky, and some of those places had muskies originally as well, but all the way out to Nebraska, the Dakotas. The sport, and even just within northern Wisconsin or Minnesota, they've spread to so many more lakes that they have introduced these fish and maintained populations through efforts from muskie clubs in the DNR in their respective states that have really broadened the area that these fish cover and their availability to the angler.
Before we leave you, I think the number one thing about muskie that doesn't get talked enough about, especially with today's advancements with technology, is handling and care of these fish. Yeah. So someone that educates about muskie and fishes for them a lot and handles them a lot, what are some tips that this year anglers can go out and protect this resource of muskie fishing and keep more fish alive?
Yeah, I think as people get into the sport and become more effective, whether it be better electronics, there's just so much knowledge out here. Everything from programs, like you said, like the Muskie Academy, to stuff on YouTube, to TV shows, to what used to be the magazines. There's a lot of that stuff that, there's a lot of information available to a person looking to get into muskie fishing. But the one thing that's not very replaceable or very teachable aside from doing it with experience, is handling these fish, and they are relatively fragile fish. They are pretty robust, especially the smaller ones. They can be tough, especially in cooler water temp times, but especially as you get towards the summer, anytime those water temps get up a little bit warmer, they just become a little bit more fragile. But it's important to handle them carefully at all times. The biggest things you want to watch out for is you don't want to have them like upside down in the net. If you have caught them, especially if they're pinned in there with a musky bait, you want to try to get those fish upright and unhooked as quickly as possible. Save the celebrating and everything else for once you got the fish unhooked safely and then they're in the bag. And even that time in the bag, you still want to be careful with them. One of the things that's always stood out to me for handling, I don't hear it talked about very much, is just, you think about, a musky net, it's coated with like a rubberized, a coating on there, and that coating can be hard on a fish, right? It's going to scrape them up a little bit just because it's rough by nature. But even just their eyes, those are sensitive organs. Fish don't have eyelids, and if you were to just, take that netting and just abrade it across your eyeball, you can imagine that probably wouldn't be a great thing. Yeah. So the longer you're letting them thrash around and mess around in a net is also not good too. Like, just because it's in a net doesn't mean that it's a-okay to spend 10 minutes doing other things. You want to get that fish unhooked, kind of have somebody maintain that fish in the net, kind of keep their face and stuff, keep them free and within the bag of the net, but not necessarily wrapped up in it, of course, which sometimes they're not that cooperative, right? But in a perfect scenario, you have somebody kind of tending to that fish while the other person has the camera ready, and then that person pulls the fish out, picture, and don't put it back in the net. Then that goes right back into the water, let them revive, and then they'll swim off when they're ready. And if you've done it right, most of the time that's, within 10 seconds, they'll swim off pretty quickly. You just want to minimize that handling time no matter what time of year it is, and just, use common sense and handle them the best you can.
And that's why I preach something about having the right equipment, right? No matter what you're doing.
And be organized with it.
Yeah,
have it ready and out.
Everything is,
know where it is and be ready in the instance, especially if you're targeting them.
Yeah.
It's certainly forgivable if you get one that's incidental. Might throw you for a little bit of a loop. But if you're targeting these fish, have something like a good hook cutters and a pliers available, or a glove if you're going to use that. Just have that stuff out and ready in case you do get one.
Yes, all good stuff. Glove, long nose pliers, bend curve pliers, depending on the
Depending
angle.
on your preference, that's 100% personal
whatever
preference.
you need to get that hook out and get that fish back in the water as soon as possible, right?
That's the goal.
So Jeff, hey, we got to give you a shout out. If someone wants to learn more from you firsthand, how do they do that?
You can check out the Muskie Academy, Muskie with a Y, academy.com. You can find me on any of the socials, Instagram and Facebook, as well as my guide service, WDH Guide Service. You can find me there on Facebook and Instagram as well, or my website, which is a little out of date, but a lot of the guys that are out a lot have that. That's unfortunate, but all my socials are current. Wisconsin, Muskie with a Y, fishingguide.com.
How you guys doing? Ben from Duke's Dozer Spinnerbaits. I wanted to thank Wisconsin for having me this weekend at the Wisconsin Muskie Expo. It's a great turnout. If you weren't able to make the show, you can head over to our website at dukesdozerspinnerbaits.com. Over there, you can see we have 40 different colors, 6 different models, and you can literally build a bait however you want it from the ground up. You can pick your weight, your hook style, your blade color, your blade combo, your skirt colors, the whole 9. Head over there today and buy a bait.
All right, everyone, welcome back from commercial. Thanks for sticking tuned. Hey, the last couple of years, I've seen this young man at these muskie shows walking around, and I told him he's got a little bit of a swagger to him. And when I find out that he started this company and started making baits at what, 15 years old?
No, 11.
11 years old.
Yep.
So I didn't see him till he was 15, but he started making muskie baits at 11 years old. And Colyn, what possesses an 11-year-old to start getting into lure making?
So I've always had a thing for big musky lures, even when I was a kid going to expos and just buying big musky lures. So when I started kind of fishing when I was younger and stuff, I came into the muskie world, watching videos, watching YouTube videos, and buying lures here and there like we all do, and I decided I could make it. So I started making my first bucktail. Me and my mom actually started making our first bucktails when we were younger. And that's kind of where CC comes from, Colyn and Carry Lures. So that's kind of where the name comes from. But
A mom and son invention.
exactly, yep. So we started making our first bucktails, and it kind of turned into making top waters made out of wood. So then came the flat-sided baits.
All right, so now tell me, so maybe this is like generation 3 then, right?
Yes.
All right, so Gen 3, some flat baits. So what are we holding here today?
So we got the Swim V2. Last year was the V1s, or the last how many years I've been making them.
Yep.
We really want to step up our quality, bring the best of what we could do. So we decided to step up the quality, and I wanted to name it different because I want people to know that it's a different bait than last year. Sure. They bought a bait last year, still great baits, whatnot, but this year, better.
This year's better.
Yep, and we wanted to name it something a little different. V2 sounds cool for version 2.
Sure.
So yeah, that's kind of where the V came from.
And what do I got here?
This is a DNR tail.
Okay.
We came out with the Dive and Rise tail last year in the 9-inch model, but this year we wanted something a little smaller, something that anyone can throw all year round. So this is our 7.5 series. We have that in the bladed series as well.
Okay.
So you can get the tail or you can get the blade.
Very good. And I don't think we're doing a product review this week, so this could be our impromptu product review,
Yep.
all right? So let's talk about these two baits real quick. So we'll start with this guy. So one's got a tail, one's got a blade. So this is kind of like, it's a glide bait of sorts, right?
Yes, yep. So it's 2/3 of Dive and Rise, then 1/3 of glider. Most Dive and Rise baits on the market, you just get that straight down, then that rise up.
Gotcha.
We want to be different. So you actually, if you work it like a glider, you can get this thing to dive, but shoot side to side. And it has body roll. When you get a paint job that looks really natural, start moving and shimmering, it's deadly. And
Looks like a real fish.
Exactly. And that's our goal.
Gotcha. All right. So this dives, shoots, comes up, comes down, does a little bit of everything. And then this guy here?
This is our paddle tail.
Right.
It's 4 inches of wood, 4 inches of tail. You can straight retrieve it and you get that shimmy coming in, or you can drop it down and it has, when it falls, it does that shimmy going down as well. I've seen people use these ice fishing for lake trout because you can just jig it.
Interesting.
Yep. It just goes up, goes down. Yep.
Yeah. And, is there a certain type of year that you prefer these type of baits? Year-round application, obviously?
Yep. Mainly year-round. All these baits can be thrown year-round. You see a lot of people throw gliders in the spring. Pretty much is a glider, Dive and Rise glider, yep. So you can throw that year-round. Dive and Rises are big in the fall because you can get those things just as paws.
And it's like the dying bait fish that's dying off and floating around.
Yep. And you can screw in weight in the bottom as a change in weight system.
Gotcha.
So screw in some weight and you can get that thing suspending right in their face.
You start 11 years old, and now that was just making the baits, right? You didn't, those were probably for yourself, maybe a friend, your family.
We sold just like 1 or 2 to family members,
right.
Yep.
When did you decide you wanted to do this as possibly your job or at least a side job?
Yeah, so we went to the Wisconsin Muskie Expo 4 years ago, and they have a buy-sell trade at the end of the Saturday, Expo Day or whatever, and I brought just lures to just like, if anyone asked in the show when me and my stepdad were walking around, and I just had them in the car, and we found out about that buy-sell trade at the end of the expo. So we're like, okay, we're gonna just bring these, see what happens. And I brought 10 lures or whatever, sold them all within 20, 30 minutes. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should look into like having a booth. So yeah, then we came to Milwaukee our first year 3 years ago. That would have been, 23. I was a freshman, that's all I know. Yeah. But so we came there, did really, really well. I mean, Friday was a little slow and it's kind of scared me a little bit. But then Saturday it was really, really good. Then I got asked to do Wausau, and then we did Wausau 3 weeks later. Had a really, really good show, my best show to this day. Yep. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start doing this. And we did 4 shows last year.
You're in high school, you start this company, you start selling them, you start making some money, and you decide you have to do this to the point where you disclosed, if it's all right to tell everyone, you decide to go to school at home.
Yeah, yep.
Because to be a student is a full-time job.
Yes,
high school or college student, that is your full-time job. Can you manage a part-time job? Maybe. Yep. But to have a full-time job and a full-time student, one's gonna kind of fail.
Oh yeah, 100%. So last year I was in school and doing 4 shows. That was really hard.
Yeah.
I would work until 1, 2 in the morning, and get up for school at 7 o'clock. So, I mean, it was just draining on the mind, you know. So I'm like, we got to make a change. Stoughton High School offers a really good program for online. You still can play sports. You still can do everything a normal student can. So we're like, let's do that, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's helped a lot. I've recently got into the muskie shop and whatnot, so I had to do something about this year, and there's no way I could have balanced school and this, so.
So what's your goal of 2025 with the baits or the company?
Finish out a good show season. I love going shows. I love talking to people, you know, picking people's brains, you know, hearing all the great stories about our lures and whatnot. So finishing out this good show season, then hopefully the shops are selling out of everything, so they keep ordering and stuff. But yeah, and have a good fishing season. Absolutely. Yeah, I want another good fishing season.
Who doesn't want another good fishing season?
Yep.
And if someone wants to catch their PB muskie, obviously they
You
got to
check out CC Lures,
right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. So 2 more questions before we wrap it up today. And less about catching fish, but one, why, if someone your age, girl, boy, doesn't matter, they're in high school, they're looking for a hobby, they don't have a passion, you know, why fishing? Why should this be something they should look into?
So one thing I found that I really loved about fishing, I like fishing by myself. Find a lot of peace in that. It's really easy on the mind. And when you're out on a lake, you know, and the sun's going down, it's like yellow and orange, you know, it's just beautiful.
Crazy color.
It's so amazing on the soul. I mean, it just absolutely just, I don't know. I look forward to sunsets and sunrises every day, going out on the water, and it's just easy on the mind, but you can be doing something, you know? You're not just sitting there watching the sunset, you're fishing, you're catching possibly big fish, you know?
All right, well, hey, I agree with about everything you said there. You know, it is, I tell people, whether you're religious, spiritual, whatever you are, it's truly an experience of itself when you're out in nature, and it's a way to bond with Mother Nature, a way to bond with God, a way to bond with yourself, you know, right? Or the people you go with. Keep it whether it's by yourself, your close friends, or a big group. There's always a different way to
experience it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. Absolutely.
And then my last thing for you. Entrepreneurship, right? It doesn't have to be fishing.
No.
It doesn't have to be. What is something, one piece of advice for any young entrepreneur out there that you would give them to help them in their process?
Yeah. So I would say chase the passion. I know it doesn't have to be a passion, but I mean, if you're chasing a goal to open up a business or have something like that, you got to have some type of passion for it. You know?
You gotta love it.
You got
it's
it.
Every day. It's in your life every day.
Every day, no matter what. Even if you're laying in bed, just woke up, and you have to email people back.
Yep.
If you're going to bed and people are messaging about products, I mean, it's every day, every second. So you really got to deep down find the love for it. Find the love for it and chase it. It's not easy. Obviously, the first years are never easy. You heal. 90% of businesses fail in the first 2-3 years. Yeah. So you got to chase it. Don't give up. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of people, you know, kind of hating on your back, you know, because that's just what happens. And you got to fight through that and just find the love in it. And that's why fishing is a good one, because even though you're making lures, you know, it gets hard sometimes, but then you get to go out fishing, like just look at the sunset and just love it. And that's when I'm fishing on the summer, it just makes me feel a lot better about doing all this, because it's just relaxing and I can find 2 different loves in it, building lures and fishing with them.
And Colyn, you know, just so you know, and everyone out there knows, if there's haters, that means 2 things. Either they don't understand it, they're ignorant to it, or they're just jealous, buddy.
Exactly, yep.
So,
amen to that.
Absolutely. Well, hey, before we leave, if anyone wants to check out your baits or order some for this year's open water season, let the camera know how they find you.
So we will be at the Wisconsin Muskie Expo. It's up in Wausau, Wisconsin. That is going to be our last show this year. If not, you can message me on Facebook. Pretty much any lure you want, you can find on there. And we are on the Muskie Shop and also Team Rhino. We do have a good selection on both big websites. So find them there or come straight to me at CC Lures on Facebook.
And just like that, we are back in the office, and look at what's above us. That's right, guys. That was a recap of the Milwaukee, Wisconsin show. We had a great time hitting all the muskie shows this year. I had never gone to a muskie show, and now we've done the Chicago, the Milwaukee, and the Wausau show. And if you're further north or in Minnesota, there is a Minnesota Muskie Show, and Midwest is there. So check out any of those shows. And if you're sitting home right now and saying, hey, I make baits, or you want to start making baits, you know, this is the show that you can do it at if you want to become an entrepreneur like we talked with Colyn and sell your baits. You know, the Muskie shows are a smaller knit community and they're a smaller show, and because of that, it's less money to buy a table. So you have a chance to sell at a show like the Muskie Show, unlike the other shows. You don't have to spend $1,000 plus hotels and all of this. Find a local show by you if you're a bait manufacturer or an independent maker, and contact one of the individuals that host the Muskie shows and get a booth. It's cheap. You're surrounded by all your buyers, right? The Muskie Show really does show out in a unique way every time, because although there's less muskie fishermen than most, they spend money. You know, I never could have imagined seeing all the money being spent at these fishing shows like it used to be. But where most shows are kind of changing, where people come more for the entertainment and less for the buying, at the Muskie shows, people buy. We saw some sell out within the first 5 minutes of door opening, which is truly incredible. I had a booth down from me, a couple at the Wausau show that came all the way from Canada, and they didn't even have baits for Sunday, so they went home on Saturday. When you make something unique and it works, this is the place to show it off, especially for your muskie fishermen. So really cool, always fun to go to all the shows. Big shout out to anyone who stopped by the booth and said, hey, it was absolutely a great time. But this was supposed to be the end of the show. We were just gonna talk about the Muskie Show, talk about Big Bertha that we got up there, and then that was it. However, I got home and I got an invite from my friends over at Aluma Craft, and they invited us to the red carpet premiere up in Minnesota for the Muskie Man. That's right, an Aluma Craft short film based on Larry Ramsell, the Muskie Man himself. Larry's been known to bust a few myths out there when it comes to some of these phantom records, but also he's known as a diehard, someone who's chased not only a state and world record, but the muskie itself for decades upon decades. So I'm gonna throw it up to our interview that we had with Larry Ramsell and the producer of the film, The Muskie Man.
How you guys doing? Ben from Duke's Dozer Spinnerbaits. I wanted to thank Wisconsin for having me this weekend at the Wisconsin Muskie Expo. Great turnout. If you weren't able to make the show, you can head over to our website at dukesdozerspinnerbaits.com. Over there, you can see we have 40 different colors, 6 different models, and you can literally build a bait however you want it from the ground up. You can pick your weight, your hook style, your blade color, your blade combo, your skirt colors, the whole 9. Head over there today and buy a bait.
All right, everyone, how are we doing? Welcome back to the show. As you can see, our scenario, our background's changed a little bit. In fact, we just stepped off the red carpet. You ever been to a red carpet event, Larry?
No, in fact, I called the producer and I said, this ain't Hollywood, what's going on?
Yeah, you know, Hollywood and Northwoods muskie fishing don't get along very well usually.
Doesn't sound like it should work out.
No, but everyone, this is Larry Ramsell, and Larry is now dubbed the Muskie Man. A life full of hunting and chasing the hardest freshwater fish there is.
It's mostly hunting.
Yes, mostly. It really is, and you know, I think when someone changes their mentality from fishing to hunting when it comes to large fish, whether it's fresh or salt, you kind of appreciate it more because you don't expect to catch something every cast like hunting.
Exactly. That's the big thing. So many people think they should get a bite every 15 minutes.
Yep.
It don't happen.
No.
Once in a while it will, but not very often.
So tell me a little bit, we're about to sit down. I'm going in pretty blind, right? I know we're talking about a life effort of chasing and passionate about the muskie, right?
Yeah, this upcoming year will be my 70th year chasing these fish.
70 years chasing one type of fish.
Yeah.
Do we discriminate against the tiger muskie, or is he allowed?
I love tiger muskie.
We love the tiger muskie too.
A lot of people don't because they're half northern pike,
right.
But I love them.
Personally, I love the tiger muskie. We talked in this week's episode about the tiger I caught last year out of a Chicago pond, 43 and a half inches. Never would have expected it in my life.
That's nice.
Just bass fishing.
Beautiful fish.
Truly gorgeous. I'll have to show you. But, those fish are ones that you remember a little more, Yeah. I love bass fishing. I love pan fishing. But there's not too many pan fish or bass that really stick out. Yet almost every single muskie I've caught, I can kind of tell you about it.
You'll remember it, yeah.
So what's that been, dedicating 70 years to that? How does one stick out more or less than the other?
Well, probably the one that sticks out the most is the one you lose.
Sure. The what if.
And it's always the biggest one.
Yep.
And I lost a 60-pound class fish in 1969. Took me 7 years to get over it, if you ever really get over it. And it's still, I can see it in my mind's eye today as it was in 1969. It was just one of those things you'll never forget, unless you get Alzheimer's or something.
So 60-pound muskie.
Yeah.
The only time I hear 50 plus pounds when talking about a fish, it's usually a sturgeon or a catfish.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about that fish.
I was fishing by myself that day, and
it's always by yourself, by the way, the big ones.
Unfortunately. And my bait came in, and I didn't see anything behind it. And I made my next cast, and out of the corner of my eye, I caught a vision. I thought, there's no logs here. But this was a log that had fins. And so I made a few more casts, and I thought, this is stupid, so I changed baits. And I was on a reef out in the middle of a bay, so I went all the way around the reef. And when I came back to where I started, I made a cast, and it hit right away. And I could see the big back as it backed up, trying to get, shaking the bait, trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And then it went down and realized it was in water 3 feet deep. Must have put its tail on the bottom and shot out like a missile out of a submarine. And it flew about 15 feet through the air. And I'm watching it the whole way, and I had a 9-inch bait. The bait was sideways in the fish's mouth, and you couldn't see either end of it.
T-boned it.
Yeah.
But inside.
And the whole bait was
so
inside.
So a 9-inch bait inside of a mouth.
Yeah.
That's a big head.
That's a
pretty big head, yeah.
And when the fish lit, it was sideways, and I think the concussion of that much weight hitting the water and pushing up through the fish's mouth twisted the bait around 180 degrees and popped the hooks loose.
Shot it out.
Yeah. I was sick. I got back to camp. I couldn't even talk. Yeah. It's something that just takes a long time to get over.
Now, obviously, we want to catch that fish. Nowadays, every kid would post it on every social media platform, and you'd hear about that fish literally around the whole world.
Right.
I've heard stories over the years talking to Native Americans up in Canada and in Minnesota and speaking to some influential fishermen that have fished their whole life. And there are those stories of the fish in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s that I've seen some black and white photos, unconfirmed records that were never weighed, and bigger than any muskie I've ever seen in person.
Yeah,
why do you think we don't see those?
Because they don't exist.
Yeah.
Through the 30s and the 40s, there was a lot of world records caught, each one just a little bit bigger than the one before. But I started a new modern day world record program in 2006. And it's been almost 20 years now.
Yep.
And we've got one entry, 58 pounds. If they existed, there's more people. There's probably 100 times more muskie fishermen today with much better equipment and much more knowledge than there was 50 years ago.
Absolutely.
But yet nobody's coming up with 60-pounders.
I can't speak for it myself personally, but I do have to say, looking back, and the first place I always notice this is when I'm in a Bass Pro Shop or a Cabela's bathroom, you see the black and white photos. right? And they're up at a camp somewhere up north, and they got a stick that's about 3 inches thick, and they're hanging about 20 different 40 to 50 inch muskie on that thing. We've come a ways.
A long ways from
when it comes to participating in muskie fishing, but also conserving and preserving the future and those spectacular fish.
Yeah, Muskies Inc., which has been around for 50-some years now.
Yep.
We have a release record of over 99%.
Okay.
That has saved the fishery.
Yeah.
Particularly because of the increase in fishermen, but that also created the increase in fishermen.
Yeah.
Because I know of guys that's caught fish 2, 3, 4 times, the same fish.
Sure.
So that means
it's
proper
working,
catch
right?
and release works.
Yes.
And so what worries me now is forward-facing sonar.
Yep.
We're going to get a lot of people new to the game that don't know how to handle these fish.
Yep.
I got no problem with them catching them.
Sure.
I got a problem with how they find them, but it's the way they're going to handle them that worries me.
Yeah.
And it could be bad.
Well, this podcast, it's on YouTube, it's on social media. We have a younger crowd, right, than the average weekend fisherman you might spend your time with.
Right.
So talk to them for a minute, What are some things that are important that they do? I always tell everyone my one tip that I'm sure you can agree with is have correct pliers, have correct hook cutters, bolt cutters,
Very
have
important.
extended ones, have some long ones.
Right.
You don't need to cut up your hand going in there.
Exactly.
What are some other things, that helps?
Well, the thing is, one of the main things that bothers me is how many pictures do you need of a 38-incher? I mean, if your first fish is 38 inches and that's big to you, that's fine. Take 2 or 3 pictures.
Sure.
But if you've caught 138 inches, you don't need 100 photographs.
Sure.
The more you handle them, the more opportunity they got to die.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a very delicate animal, and if they're not properly handled, the serious muskie fishermen don't even take them out of the water anymore.
Right.
Unless they're really a giant.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we just reach down with the pliers and pop the hooks, and away they go. And you can estimate within an inch how big they are if you've done it long enough.
Yeah,
So
if you got a John boat or a kayak, put a measuring tape on the side of it,
Yeah, you don't need to drag them in the boat and put them on a bump board.
Right.
Especially if they're not a big fish. What's the point?
Yeah, and I advocate it for trout a lot, but also because they're finicky fish, they're sensitive.
They're delicate.
Yep. The slime coat's super important on these fish, I've talked about it a couple times, and I hate to keep going back to it, but this year I started getting into spear fishing, okay? So I did a lot of time under the water, swimming. And especially when it comes to bass, because of the tournaments and how much handling goes on for them, I saw a lot of skin disease and a lot of scale rash and fungi, And a lot of that's from handling and taking that slime coat off and injuring the fish. So
and handle them with dry hands.
Right. So get away from your rigid nets, try to use plastic or soft nets. Cradle nets, I'm sure, are great for a muskie.
Yeah, they're a little dangerous, though, because a lot of guys put the thing in the water and try to pull the fish up into the cradle.
Yeah.
And what the guy that's holding the cradle, if that lure pops out of that fish's mouth, going to hit him right in the kisser.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with the cradle.
Sure. But just different ways, right, of making it safer for the fish and yourself.
Right. I mean, if you've caught a number of fish, you don't need to handle it.
Yeah.
Don't even touch it.
Yeah.
Just pop the hooks out. If you want a picture, take it beside the boat in the water. Makes a great picture.
I could sit here and talk to you all day. I've been obsessed with fish, and truly, that's the word, obsessed.
Yeah.
I'm an addict, right?
Yeah.
You're a fellow addict. We're
Yeah.
fellow addicts.
Exactly.
We might have to go to rehab after this movie. I don't know. Fish rehab. But one tip, one trick, or just one thing that you have experienced in your 70 years of fishing that you feel like you wish you knew earlier in your life that might have changed some of the things you did?
The main thing is handling and taking lots of pictures. It's just not necessary. And the other thing is, when I grew up, my dad was from the era that didn't release anything.
Yes, the catch and cook.
If it was a legally linked fish, it was a dead fish.
Yep.
And so that went on for almost too long. In fact, when I started with catch and release, him and I were fishing one day, and I caught a mid 30-inch fish.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to release this fish. If you want it, you're going to have to net it. And he did. He just couldn't see letting it.
He couldn't take it.
He couldn't take it.
No, and to be fair, in a lot of parts of the world, they look at us crazy
Like
for
we're
catching
nuts.
and releasing
Yeah,
fish.
exactly. Yep.
But it is truly, most countries also don't have as many people that are sport fishing,
Exactly.
and we don't have as rich of waters because we have so much manufacturing and
Right.
Everything that's affecting our water. But no, I agree with that. Let's keep let's keep the fishing going for the future generations. And it's awesome for you here saying that because you've had 70 years of it, but you still care about what's to come.
Right.
Now,
And here's the thing, too.
Yeah.
If you want to catch a big one, you can't kill it when it's little.
No, it'll never get big, will it?
No. And the high end of the pyramid is the biggest fish.
Yep.
But there's very, very few of them.
Yeah,
So if
that-
you take
that
one
is
out
true.
that's 25 years old, it ain't coming back and it can't be replaced.
Absolutely.
It's going to take 25 years for another one to grow that big.
Now, before I let you go, I do have to ask you, and real quick, Nate, can you bring those in real here?
Oh, no.
Oh boy, all right. So Larry, I'm up in Minnesota right now, and the last thing I expected to see was a Portillo's Chicago dog here. I'm gonna have to get my celery salt here in a second, but explain to me why is there Chicago hot dogs here at a Muskie show?
Well, when they came to Hayward this summer to do the filming,
Yep.
or this fall, I guess it was, we have in Hayward a food wagon.
Okay.
It's it's not even from here to the wall long, but they sell all meat hot dogs.
Yep.
I had almost 100 of them last year.
One sitting?
No.
Oh, okay.
Over
All
the
right.
summer,
Very good.
but they're good.
good
And
dogs.
so when we did the filming in Hayward,
Yep.
we had to go to the bomb dog wagon, and that's the end of that story.
Well, hey, shout out to the Bomb Dog Wagon. And
Bomb dogs.
how do you think the Portillo's dog stands up to it?
I haven't had one yet.
Oh, you're in for a good treat. I have to
All right.
tell you.
Sounds good.
Well, Larry, I can't wait to sit down and watch the film. I know it's hard on some people to understand the life that we live and the passion and addiction we have, but from one addict to another one, congrats on chasing them, and I can't wait to see the film.
Thank you. I can't either. I haven't seen it yet.
We wanted to sit down, stand up, I guess, right off the red carpet.
Yep.
Always a fun event, when
Big
there's a
time.
red carpet. Put the suit on for it, right?
I love it, man. I love to see
Gotta
it.
get dapper.
It looks
you know?
great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, Mitch, you were behind some of the creative design and writing and directing for this movie. I'm a fisherman, and I love film.
Yeah.
You don't see those two together very often. You don't see too many films, unless it's, two old grumpy men, talking about fly fishing.
Yeah.
So what went into this? What inspired this, and how did it come to be?
Yeah. So I work with Aluma Craft,
Yeah.
and Aluma Craft's all about this passion and understanding of love for craft, and we know that we take it seriously. We're boats, built for anglers by anglers, and so we wanted to use our platform to shine a light on an angler and a fishery that is really special and gets that obsession for fishing unlike any other. Muskies, people are pretty passionate about muskie.
Yeah.
And Larry Ramsell is an icon. He's inspiration to muskie anglers because he's been doing it for 60 years, dedicated his life to these fish and the craft of muskie fishing. So yeah, we wanted to use our platform to spotlight somebody that deserved it.
So after following Larry around and getting to know him and
Yeah.
stuff, what kind of separated him from the fishermen you've met before and such?
Larry's got a very, very unwavering passion for these fish. I mean, 60 years chasing muskies and writing books and doing seminars, all kinds of stuff for all of those decades. I mean, that's serious passion. So, I feel like he's just the perfect kind of person to spotlight because he is so invested in these fish and the craft of muskie fishing. So, yeah, and he's kind of like a muskie himself, man. Like he's got a bit of that muskie personality. It was like better than we expected because he's a really sweet guy and he's a funny guy and everything else. So it was really fun getting to know him and make this project and just getting to go fish with him too in December on a really mighty river and chase muskie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Now, not I don't know if everyone's going to be able to see this film, but if you could sum it up, you know, give us a 1-minute synopsis before we head into the movie here.
Yeah, I think, it's like at 82 years old, Larry Ramsell's still on the hunt for that fish.
Yeah.
And I think like that fish is not necessarily the biggest fish. It's the fish that just kind of like does something to him emotionally, he'll tell you it's the biggest fish, but I think fishing's kind of deeper than that, and I really feel like what we tried to capture with this film, and I'll give a shout out to our amazing director, Michael Del Monte, fantastic filmmaker, and our wicked producer, Jackie Powell. And everybody else that pitched in on this movie. There's a lot of hardworking people that came together to show that, the passion for fishing is much more than, it's not a pastime, it's like really somebody's life, and they design it around that. So, yeah, I think the synopsis is, even at 82, he's still on the hunt for muskie because it's what he does, man.
Yeah. And I don't know if they'll see it, but I haven't even seen it yet, and I'm feeling a Rotten Tomato score of 100 on this bad boy.
Baby, come on.
Let's go.
I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Well, hey, we got to get in our seats and check out this movie. Welcome back, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed some of that coverage from the Muskie Man. It was really cool. It was my first red carpet premiere ever, and I got to go with Nathan Speltz, N.A. Speltz. Check him out. Instagram, YouTube, kid's a legend. But also getting to meet Larry, a true legend, someone that's been in the industry and has helped conservation, has helped spread the love and the way I put it, addiction of fishing. And he is truly someone like that. We had some personal words, and we both talked about how when you chase that bite, it can interfere with life a little bit, get in the way of jobs, get in the way of friendships, relationships. Especially myself when we're speaking about multi-species angling, there's almost always a bite for something. We got to get the best ice fishing bite because ice season's so short. Then it's the walleye bite right away, and then the pre-spawn bass bite, and then they're on their beds, and then it's great in the summer for trolling Lake Michigan and throwing frogs like I love to do. And then the fall comes and, now you got to be fishing, for the trout and the salmon. It never ends. And Larry felt that way just about muskie, that every day he's missing out if he's not casting after one. So decades and decades and hundreds to thousands of muskie, the fish of 1 in 10,000 cast. Truly such an allure to the fish. And that's why this episode's so interesting and so cool to me, because muskie fishing is something I don't do a whole lot. It's not something that really gets me going, but seeing the community that's out there for it, seeing the enthusiasm and the love for it is truly something that I can relate to for just fishing as a whole and the outdoors. So it was an awesome episode. It was a great trip going up to the muskie shows and the premiere. We got the big girl hung up here. Huge shout out to Alex and Brad who were with me when we landed that fish. It was a team effort, Brad, I know you're sorry that I stole your fish, buddy, but hey, when it bites your line, it bites your line. So it is what it is. But truly a great fish. Again, if you guys want to get any fish remade, whether it's a muskie, a perch, a bass, a salmon, give Rick at Lax Productions a call, and he will get you a beautiful mount. I love walking into my room now every day to see that. It's super cool. Well, guys, I don't know what we'll be doing next time yet, but you know where we'll be in 2 weeks, right here, so make sure you come back. Huge shout out to our renewing title sponsor. That's right, Fish Daddy's on board for another season, so get ready to see all the new stuff coming out for Fish Daddy. In fact, we've got a little secret, but something big is coming soon, and you guys will be the first ones to know about it right here in the podcast, so make sure you see our next episode, because I think we're going to be giving some more hints each episode. And if you haven't buy your fishing license, that's right, it's time to renew. It's getting warm from here on out, guys. Spring is here, and we are going to enjoy. Until next time, tight lines, and we will see you on the water.